So my experience with Monster Hunter Rise so far has been a pretty interesting one. Granted, I'm only about 20-ish hours into the game so far as of making this video, so this is more so just my first impressions of the game rather than my opinions on the game as a whole. I will, however, be making a video after I finish up with the main content in the game for the base game and the expansion that I want to cover, so if you would like to see that, then be sure to subscribe. But anyways, for a little bit of a background, I am a rather casual player when it comes to the Monster Hunter series. I have played some of the old ones many years ago, like Freedom Unite and Generations, but again, I was a casual player of these, and I didn't really do much of the in-game content. Before jumping into Rise, the last Monster Hunter game that I actually played was World, which I genuinely had a ton of fun playing, but it has been many years since I properly sat down and played them, mainly because I am a huge fan of RPGs, and most games in this genre are easily around 100 hours long, so it gets hard sometimes to just pick one up and sit down and play that one game for many hours when there's just so many amazing games that catch your interest. So since it's been a while since I've last played a Monster Hunter game, I did have to relearn a lot of things when jumping into Rise, which actually was pretty easy to do. The game is very handholdy in the beginning hours of the game, especially while you're doing the village quests, since these act as the story content for the game, or at least part of it, and it also acts as the game's tutorial system. And if I'm being completely honest, it did actually get a bit too overwhelming at parts with just how many tutorial pop-ups and information was thrown at you in the game within the first few hours. I'm currently sitting around 20-ish hours in the game so far, and I'm still receiving the occasional pop-up for various new mechanics and things that I'm still running into. It's not nearly as many as within the first few hours of the game for sure, but it was still surprising to see, as although it has been many years since I have played the previous Monster Hunter games, I don't really remember there being that many tutorial pop-ups. Now that being said, this so far has been my only major negative with the game, and even then, it's not really that big of a deal, as these tutorials, in some sense, are actually extremely helpful, and there are a lot of things that I probably would not have figured out immediately, and I could have possibly just pushed off this content until later portions of the game if it wasn't for these tutorials. I think I just wish that they presented them in another way other than just shoving 3 different tutorials in your face back to back when you're literally in the middle of an attacking animation against a large monster. Overall, however, I have been having an absolute blast with the game. The combat feels very nice and actually feels a lot faster than I remember from the previous games, with some fights only taking me about 10 to 20 minutes in the beginning portions of the game, where I distinctly remember spending about 40 plus minutes on larger monsters in the past. All of the weapons that you have come to love are still here, and if I'm being honest, the overall feel of the game has felt somewhere between a mixture of Freedom Unite and World, which I'm sure that most people will actually enjoy. Although, if you are looking for a story-heavy game, then this might not be it. While there is a story, the game does not exactly feel as story-focused or driven as it did in Monster Hunter World, which will likely catch some people off guard if their first game in the series was World. The Monster Hunter series in general has never really been story-focused to begin with, as it shares a similarity with the Dark Souls series in that regard. The game is more centered around progression and defeating these large monsters, and it's about the gameplay and not so much the story. I have seen some stuff online that the Sunbreak expansion is a lot more story-focused though, but I have yet to get that far, as I probably have at least another 50 hours minimum before I even touch the expansion. On another note, I want you guys to just listen to this for a few seconds. This is the music that you're immediately greeted to when you get to the main menu of the game, alongside the beautiful aesthetics. The music in this game is incredible when it's actually playing, which is only when you're in the main menu or when you're in the village, as once you actually go out on hunts, the game shifts mostly to just ambiance rather than actually playing music. So during my live streams on Twitch, I've actually been just playing random music whenever I go out on hunts, but then whenever I re-enter the villages, I always mute whatever background music that I'm playing in order to listen to the game's soundtrack because it's just that good. The music in the main menu alone was actually enough to make me very excited to jump into the game, so I think that they've done an amazing job here. Character creation was also pretty interesting, as it's not really that far off from the Monster Hunter World character creator, but there is a major new feature here, which is a brand new companion. Throughout all of the Monster Hunter games, you have always obviously had the hunter that you play as, but you've also had a pet called a palico, which can help aid you in your adventures. But in Rise, they've added another companion to go alongside the palico, which is a dog-type companion called a a palamute. This companion is a bit of a game changer, and I'm sure is one of the biggest reasons that the game feels so much more fast-paced, as not only does the Malamute help you with combat in the game, but it also acts as a mount to help you get around these various maps much faster. And alongside this new addition to make traversal faster, there's also the addition to the wire bug mechanic, which has been insanely useful. At first, I wasn't too sure about this one, but it actually adds a lot of versatility to the game. For example, you can simply use the wire bug as kind of a Spider-Man mechanic to throw yourself forward so that you're moving a little bit faster than if you were just to run, but it can also be used to climb up high places, or you can even use it to launch yourself very high above the monster to charge up an attack. It can even be used in combat as a dodge mechanic, which has actually saved my ass many times already. It's just such a nice new feature that has been added to the game that makes the combat feel a lot more fast-paced and in some sense more fluid. Now back to what I was saying earlier, while the game so far hasn't really felt like it focuses on the story as much as Monster Hunter World, there is still a story. So after making your character, you're woken up from a nightmare by your palamute and almost immediately introduced to the twin waifus, who are essentially like the handler from Monster Hunter World. It's actually a pretty interesting way that the devs have included these two, as the twins have been separated as quest and hub maidens to give you different quests based on which one that you talk to. Talking to Hinoa, who can be found outside in the middle of the village, will give you access to the village quests. And to my understanding, the village quests are basically like the tutorial for the game as well as the first half of the base game story. Because of this, these are solo-only missions with monsters that are much easier than those that you would face during the hub quests, which I'm gonna go over that in a minute. The way that this works is the game starts you off with a 1-star quest. To progress to the 2-star quests, you will have to complete key quests, and doing a certain number of key quests, which are marked with this little icon, will then unlock an urgent quest, which will provide you with a little bit more of the story and a monster to fight. And then after doing so, you'll progress to the 2-star quests. This repeats until you get to the 6-star village quests. However, I have not gotten that far yet into the game, so this information is purely based off of what I found online. So if this isn't 100% correct, then please feel free to correct me down below in the comments. But to my understanding, the story that is provided to you through the village quest ends after doing the 5-star quests. After this, the second half of the story, I believe, is picked back up once you get to the 4-star hub quests. It's a little bit confusing, but then again, the base game isn't really focusing heavily on the story and mainly feels like it just kind of exists as a means of progression. The other twin who can be found in the hub area is named Minoto. Hub quests are much harder than the village quests and can be done both solo and with other players. However, doing them solo is going to be a lot more challenging. You will likely spend most of your time here rather than with Hinoa after you have completed all of the village quest content, as the hub in general has a lot more quests for you to do. Hub quests start at 1 star just like the village quests, but they go up to 7-star quests. And then once you complete the 7-star urgent quest, you will start to unlock even more quests after that based on your hunter rank, but they will all be listed as 7-star quests. Anyways, going back to the story, after you leave your tent with the twins, the camera kind of pans up toward the sky to show you a rather interesting flying monster in the distance, which I can only assume has some kind of importance to do with the story later on in the game. You are then introduced to the village chief, who gives you a general idea of what the story will be, as he mentions that he received a letter about a quote-unquote rampage that the village will need to begin preparing for. Basically, the rampage is a huge horde of monsters that attacks villages in a massive frenzied stampede, which just sounds terrifying. And according to the village chief, it was a rampage that almost wiped out the village 50 years ago. So now, you as the new certified hunter must help with the preparations to protect the village from this potential disaster and help the locals with various struggles relating to the increase in monster activity as of recent. And yeah, that's basically the plot so far. So it's a rather basic plot, but then again, I'm only currently about 20 hours into the game, and generally Monster Hunter games aren't really story focused to begin with. It did surprise me a little bit, considering that Monster Hunter World did have a lot of story heavy moments. So I kind of expected it to be a little bit like that, but it hasn't really affected my enjoyment of the game at all, since the game is more focused around the gameplay after all. And I have also heard that Sunbreak will have a lot more story content than in the base game, so once I get around to finishing that up and making another video on Monster Hunter Rise, I'll be sure to update you guys on whether or not that is true and my opinions about the expansion. Overall, my time so far in Monster Hunter Rise has actually just been an absolute blast. Even as a solo player, I have been enjoying every single moment of it and have been pretty addicted to it. So much so that I have to make sure to stop myself from trying to play even more of the content when I'm not on stream. The combat is very satisfying, and whenever I come out of a fight, I almost immediately want to jump back into another one and go on another 10 to 40 plus minute fight, depending on the quest and the monster that I'm fighting. The The monsters themselves have been very interesting as well, with some being a bit of a headache to kill, but it's always a blast to see what the next monster that I have to face is. And it's also very nice to come back to some of the monsters that I already recognize from games like Monster Hunter World. The maps have also been amazing to explore, and the overall aesthetic of the game has been very pleasing to look at. Again, I am a casual player when it comes to the Monster Hunter series. Even though I've played the older games, I would by no means call myself a veteran of the games, and there might be some people who dislike various decisions included, as this is just kind of the inescapable reality of any newer game. People will always try and find something to argue about, but for me, my overall experience with the game has been amazing, and I can't wait to jump back in soon on my Twitch streams and start fighting some more monsters. Speaking of, I'm currently doing a playthrough of a lot of the content in the base game and the expansion minus the in-game content over on my Twitch streams. I mainly stream various RPG games, both old school and modern, across many different subgenres, as well as the occasional horror game. So if any of that sounds interesting to you and you would like to hang out and chat or even just toss on my stream as background noise, then you can find my link on screen as well as in the video's description. Definitely feel free to stop by and hang out, talk about Monster Hunter, or discuss other RPGs and games that you enjoy. It's pretty cool to see people in chat mention that they have found the streams through my YouTube videos and decided to hang out. So again, feel free to stop by. We would absolutely love to have you there. I will also be posting another video on Monster Hunter Rise for my final opinions on the game after I have completed the main content that I want to cover for the base game and the expansion, so be sure to subscribe if you would like to see that. If you guys have enjoyed the video, then consider leaving this video a like, as it would help me out a lot and I would greatly appreciate it. And also let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are on Monster Hunter Rise, or which Monster Hunter game is currently your favorite throughout the series. I do go through and read all the comments, so I would definitely like to hear what you guys think about the game. But anyways, thank you all for watching. It still blows my mind that people have been enjoying the random videos that I've been posting. So again, thank you all for all of the support that you guys have given me last year. I hope that you all have had an awesome new year, and I will see you all in the next video.